Hello, and welcome to the Everyday Fi podcast. Today on the show, I'll be speaking with Sean and Katie about their path to Fi. This is a really excellent episode because we get to talk about how privilege affects financial success, how to balance a love for travel with a love for homesteading, how to set your kids up to have an open mind about their futures, and why Priuses are the best car in the world. Stay tuned for this really incredible conversation. Thank you for joining me. Today, I'll be talking with Sean and Katie about their financial independence path. Hey, y'all, why don't you introduce yourself?
Hi, how's it going? I'm Sean Casey.
And I'm Katie Casey.
So we're from Illinois. We're both educators. Specifically, we're both school psychologists. So we work in the school settings, K-12. And yeah, we're excited to be on the show.
Yeah, I'm excited to have you guys. So how did y'all come about to financial independence? Like, tell me a little bit about what drew you to the movement, how you found it. Did somebody tell you about it? Did you read about it? And yeah, how did that all come about?
I guess I could just provide a little more, background about us. I think we both really enjoy our jobs as educators. I won't speak for Katie, but we have a daughter. She's upstairs on watching some shows right now. And also we're both physically and mentally healthy, as are our families of origin. So we have a really strong social support network of family and friends. And I just wanted to share that because, so I'm a white, hetero, cisgendered man. So I just wanted to point that out because I think we come from a lot of privilege. And Katie, did you want to add anything else to that?
Sure, yeah. I identify as a Chinese American cisgendered woman, and my grandparents immigrated to this country on both my mom and dad's side. And I think that plays a role in how I viewed money or how I was raised with money, because my parents had their own money journey that they inherited from their parents. And I think that story kind of influenced how we came to our Fi journey together. So in my family of origin, both my parents were raised in very, what's the word that I'm looking for? Like, everybody saved a lot of money. They were very frugal in their choices. My grandma would clip coupons, shop the sales, and then stockpile a whole bunch of canned goods and then figure out how to use those. And they both left large inheritances to my parents, who are also very financially frugal. And as a child, I grew up, and the rule was on your birthday, you save 50% of your birthday money for the future, whatever that may be, whether it's saving up for, and when I was really young, a pet or college or a car or whatever. But I also come from that position of privilege. I was telling my mom this morning that we were going to be on this podcast about financial independence, and she kind of rolled her eyes at me because in her mind, we're not financially independent because we're so dependent on our community to support our decisions. And I don't think that we would have the savings rate that we do if we didn't have all of those privileges that Sean was talking about. But in addition to that, graduating from our undergrads debt-free, having access to free childcare in our able-bodied, mentally well parents, being able to afford the down payment on our house without the help from our parents, affording our cars, our modes of transportation. So we come from a lot of privilege in our history. Sean, did you have anything that you wanted to add?
Yeah, totally. And we do. I have a brother who lives in Boston, and our friends, we know how much people spend on childcare, right? And our childcare has been provided by our, split between our folks. So both our sets of parents. So yeah, we're super lucky. So all that to say, like, we're super lucky. And as Katie said, like, I think she always came from that mentality of saving. And I would say that I didn't come to that. Interestingly, when we were first dating, before a little bit before we got married, Katie's mom gifted us a book by Susie Orman. And so we were reading this, and I think some of the conversations around it were super helpful. But my response to saving at the time was, why? We're both educators. Why would we save? We have a pension. So anyway, my whole thoughts have changed over the years. Not that we still have our pensions, but certainly I have gone to the other side in my views about saving money. So.
And what does that mean, gone to the other side? Like what did you originally believe about money when you had your pension? I know you said, why should we save? We have a pension. But where did those beliefs kind of originate from, and how did you change your mind?
I think that's a good question. So I think both my folks are educators, and I will say, like, for many educators, for many public servants, if you put in a full career, you are kind of taken care of in retirement. And that's not true in every state and for everybody. But I think the way I discovered the financial independence community, so I started learning, like, around that time, right? We had a financial advisor, and I was doing all the things that I thought I was supposed to do, right? So I was saving money in my 403B at work, and I bought some whole life insurance as well. So that's what really got me to the financial independence community by a long way, right? I was first thinking about it. It didn't seem right to me, right? This whole life insurance, right? It felt like something felt wrong about it. So I started like going down the rabbit hole and researching all this. And I found out that it probably wasn't the best choice for somebody in their 20s to have this whole life policy, right? And the same thing with my 403B at work, right? I was in an annuity and with high fees and all the things that you hear educators are probably being sold, right? And so I was just livid at that whole like industry, but I didn't know what to do. So through looking around, somehow I found like Mr. Money Mustache. And well, actually I heard him on a Marketplace Weekend or something. And he was like interviewing. And it was like all around the same time. I was like, save 50%. That's impossible, right? So yeah, I definitely came to it reluctantly, but I think it was just like this ire at the, financial advisor community, just being sold these products that weren't fit. And I found out later, right? Oh, it's easy to set up a thing, set up a IRA on Vanguard, right? But I just didn't know. So yeah, that's how I kind of found the financial independence community. And it really, like, once I discovered Mr. Money Mustache, it really spoke to me, just with not only the saving, but also just some of the environmentalism as well, right? Like, it's like, oh, right, not spending on stuff I don't need is also helpful to the earth. So that message really resonated with me.
And I think as Sean was going through his journey, we started consuming some other resources like Vicki Robin and Marie Kondo. And we started really thinking about the choices that we were making in our lives. And prior to thinking about financial independence, it was kind of set that we were both going to be serving our 34-year term, like to meet the criteria to max out our pension defined benefit that we would receive so that we could retire comfortably. And as we started thinking about that, it's like, once you retire at the age of 60, how many years do you have left where you're not caring for aging parents or taking care of grandchildren or in good health, where you're able to do the things that you want to do? And we started talking about things that we are interested in doing and how we want to spend our time. And Marie Kondo kind of helped with curating the things that we have in our life. And Vicki started helping us think about the ways that we're spending our time and just thinking about the flexibility that financial independence gives you. I think that we're both very fulfilled by our careers and the jobs and what we spend our days doing for our paid labor currently. But if we don't find that fulfilling at some point in the future, I'd like to be able to have the flexibility to walk away from that or to make a shift without having to really think about what the financial impact of that would be, or to give flexibility in how much time I'm spending doing that for paid work.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. And can you guys clarify something for me? Did you find financial independence together, or did one of you find it separately and then kind of bring the other one along? How did that journey kind of start for you guys?
Okay, I was going to ask you, Katie, like, would you say that like I kind of went down the rabbit hole first?
Yeah, I would say that you totally went down the rabbit hole first. I mean, I think that at the beginning, I was saving more in my retirement accounts than you were, because that was what was ingrained in me. And my mom was doing like lots of little checks of what my percent savings rate was. And I knew that I was saving for the nebulous future. I like didn't have an idea about what I was saving for. I was like saving for in case there was an emergency, in case there wasn't a pension, in case I needed money to bridge something, in case I needed to pay for college for a child in the future. I was just saving because that was the thing that I needed to do, but that wasn't very motivating to me. So my percent savings rate wasn't very high, because it's like, why am I like, what am I doing with this money? And then as Sean started going down the rabbit hole of FI, it became very interesting to learn alongside him.
For sure. This was all kind of, I was kind of discovering things. And I think we even read, not The Simple Path to Wealth. What's Vicky's book? Vicky Robbins'
Your Money
book?
or Your Life.
Yeah. We read that together, right? Like on a road trip.
Yeah, or commuting. We
like
started
in the
commuting
car.
to work together.
Oh, that's right. And did we have it audio? Was it
No, we
audio,
just
or
read
were
it
we
out
reading
loud.
it to each other?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so cute.
And around the same time, of course, like Choose FI came out, right? So we were listening to that, but we were making these incremental changes, right? So it was like, okay, like we got out of the whole life insurance, right? I opened up a Vanguard account. It was actually the other way around, right? But yeah, someday we'll tell you about the story where we were in the office of the financial advisor, and there was a lot of testosterone in the room, I think.
I think that day has come, and I would love to hear this story if you're willing to share it.
Well, I mean, Katie kind of tells it the best, but like we like wanted to do the right thing, right? And I know you're a financial coach, right, Megan?
Yes.
We needed you like 10 years ago, right? So like, or more than, well, yeah, no, we've been married for 10 years. So anyway, we're trying to do the right thing. And I asked this advisor about Vanguard, and he said, and I kid you not, he said, what did he say, Katie? Well, Vanguard uses all their money to advertise. So, oh man, it was so outlandish that I was just like, and of course, like everything he was saying, like the complete opposite is true, right? So anyway, then he was going to have us sign some papers to buy more whole life insurance and to set up our Roth IRAs with him. And so anyway, I asked him again about Vanguard. He was like, no, I feel like you don't trust me or something. No, using all the tactics he learned in, how to sell this stuff to people at school. And like, I was like, no, I'm not going to sign that. I'm not going to set, I'm not doing this. I didn't know. Did you have anything to add about that story, Katie?
Yeah,
no, you
Katie.
just did a really good job standing your ground. I mean, I'm a people pleaser, and I also didn't feel like I had enough information to have a conversation with this financial planner who is supposed to be responsible for taking care of our money and making sure that we're able to meet the goals that we've set for ourselves and that we've talked about with him. And he's shared, information about his personal journey, and he's got a wife and he just had a baby, and all of these things that make you feel really connected to this other person. And you're connecting with this person on a personal level, and they're selling you goods, and then it's all very enmeshed. And as a people pleaser, was just feeling very anxious in that setting. I wanted to sign the papers, get out of there, and just kind of forget that it happened, because it was like, here's this guy that's supposed to be taking care of our money, and he's questioning our trust in him. And of course, I don't want him to feel like bad about himself or feel like we don't want to give him our business to support his family. But Sean did a really great job of staying the course and staying focused on our plan that we had gone into our meeting with. So yeah, it worked out because Sean was able to stay focused.
I just remember Katie describing that she could smell
Yes.
the energy in the room as well. I was not feeling confident, right? And don't get me wrong, like it still took me a few months to figure out how to open a Roth IRA up on Vanguard, right? You just like, you're not born knowing these things, but they can be figured out. But it's set up. Of course, all these systems are set up to make it seem hard, right? And once you actually get down to it, it's like, oh, I just set up an account and I had no idea. Oh, this was super easy. But you don't know what you don't know.
Absolutely. And I often say that the financial world is gatekept, and it is gatekept for a reason. Folks like this, it's set up in a way that tries to make you feel dumb, like you don't know enough, like you said, Katie, to understand. And so you are basically feel like you have to put your trust in a professional to manage your money because you couldn't possibly figure it out on your own, because look at all of this jargon that they're using, and it's just not true. And I wish that the financial world would do a better job of separating people out like this advisor that you had from the advisors who really are out there to help you, and because those people do exist. It's just that they're mixed in with the sales guys, and the financial world does a really bad job of separating them and like educating people on what the differences are, because they've got the CFP who's duly registered, right? So they can be fiduciary and non-fiduciary. And for anybody who doesn't know what fiduciary means, that just means that the person has your best interest at heart when they are making recommendations for what you should invest in and how you should, manage your money. And the problem is that a person who is duly registered, they can be a fiduciary, have your best interests at heart, and be a salesperson. And they don't have to tell you when they're just selling you something and when they have your best interests at heart. So a lot of the time, you've got these CFPs who do have a fiduciary duty to you in one aspect, but then they'll turn around and try to sell you insurance products. That's usually where the duly registered aspect comes in, is for the insurance. They'll try to sell you this. And since you don't know necessarily that is just them trying to make money and it's really not in your best interest, you actually don't know any better. And it's not anybody's, any of our fault. It is the financial industry's fault, and it is done on purpose. So I applaud you both for getting out of there and not signing those papers and getting out of your whole life policy. And yeah, thank you for sharing that, because I think this is going to be incredibly helpful for other people who might have financial advisors and maybe need to look at what they're in right now and see if it really is in their best interest.
At some point I wrote like a thank you note to Mr. Money Mustache, like, hey Pete, thanks for writing all the stuff you ever wrote, right? But in there, I was like, really, I thank this guy because like it really motivated me just to learn, and I did. So there's that, and you're absolutely right, Megan. There's not only bad players out there, and the other thing is, whatever you're investing in, these accounts are going to grow over time, right? I just discovered that like if we made different choices, we would essentially get better returns without the fees and everything.
Yeah. And I understand that feeling of, man, if I could just go back and, tell my younger self to do better. But I think you mentioned you don't know what you don't know. And I feel like a big step that I tell people to do is have compassion for yourself, because you only can meet yourself where you are today. And you made the best decision with what information you had in the moment. And that's all you can ask of yourself. And I bet that your accounts are going to grow so much. You guys are still really young, and it's fine. You learned, and when you did learn, you made the right choice. And that's what really matters in the end. So that's my 2 cents.
Yeah.
So, okay, I'm reading that you said you wrote a letter to Mr. Money Mustache, that you first heard him on Marketplace Weekend on NPR. But when you first heard him, you were kind of outraged at the idea of saving 50% of your income. What got you over that outrage?
Well, I mean, getting married doubled our income, so that was part of it. And like, truthfully, like, practically, right? I do want to point out that, like, we as a household, because our incomes have grown over the years, we've outpaced inflation. Not like we're still in public service, right? So it's not like, but yeah. So our incomes have grown, and we doubled our income as a household. So that's part of it, right? Like, our income is higher. But the other thing is, I stopped spending everything I had, right? So it's like, my mentality used to be like, money is meant to be spent, right? And and like I said, it's like, why would you ever save money, right? And like, that literally was my mentality. And I think, yeah, I mean, I think just the act of, the optionality, right? I'm buying optionality. I'm buying choice. The freedom aspect of it, right, was definitely worth it.
I
And
think,
then automating everything just made it so much easier too, right? Then it became easier. Go ahead, Katie. Sorry.
yeah, I think automating it definitely made it easier to save. But I think what also was eye opening was kind of doing an inventory of how we were spending our money, and like taking a look at where our money was actually going. And as we're doing that, taking an inventory of the physical things that we have currently in our house that either are going to be donated, given away, thrown away, that we don't need, that was just like as Vicky calls it, a gazingas pin, and just trying to figure out where we wanted to prioritize spending our money. And we do still buy things that are new, that are pretty, that are shiny. We do still spend money on things that bring us joy in terms of entertainment or experiences. But I think that we're a little bit more thoughtful now about whether or not that is an investment in our future selves, or if that's something that we really, really want to have tied to us for the rest of our lives, or if we want to pay, refer to it as like we're paying the rent on that shirt, right? Like, it's not a shirt that's going to live with us forever. We're just going to own it for a couple of years, and then it's probably going to go away. But just kind of taking an inventory of where that money was going, what value that was bringing to our lives, and making decisions that were a little bit more thoughtful so that we could put a little bit more into our savings.
And that was totally a community thing too, right? Like, our friends, Brian and Emily, totally asked us, well, are you it was Personal Capital at the time, right? It's like, are you tracking? Personal Capital has a great app, and we were able to see. But also that mentality, I totally agree, Katie. It was like, oh, these things that we have are little pieces of the earth. So thinking about it in that way really helped me. Like, do I need this? And does it bring joy?
Yeah, I love how you said these things are little pieces of the earth. And I think that's very powerful. And of course, I recognize Marie Kondo's Does This Bring You Joy line, which I think is a great one. And the problem is if you are like me and almost all of your things have some sort of sentimental value of some kind, I'm like, yes, it brings me joy because it was my grandmother's, and even though it's been sitting on a shelf collecting dust, it's still so but I didn't buy it though, I like kind of, I don't know, inherited is not the right term, but I got it from my grandmother, but I don't want to, and so I don't want to get rid of it. And so that's a lot of my things have a lot of memories to them. And so it's hard for me to get rid of the clutter.
Yes, we definitely, we don't live in a minimalist household by any stretch of the imagination. We also have lots of sentimental goods, as well as our 7-year-old is kind of a hoarder of all things. But yes, just that being thoughtful about new things coming into the house and other new purchases being little pieces of the earth, and whether that will spark joy for now, like how long will that joy last? is that something that's sustainable?
Oh, yeah. I actually like that. For some reason, I was thinking Marie Kondo was saying, does this spark joy for all the things that you had to get rid of? But I love that you use it as a way of, does this spark joy, for new things that you buy? And I feel like you've kind of got to trick yourself on that one, because you can, in the moment, when you're like looking at something new and shiny and you're like, this would make me so happy, you can, of course, say yes to that question, right? Does this spark joy? Yes, it does. Well, okay, so let's wait a week. Does it still spark joy, in a week?
Yeah.
And I feel like, yeah, you have to kind of trick your brain, because all your brain really wants is that dopamine hit. And so you have to like take it away from it and kind of, sit with it a little bit. I will always say, though, that experiences are hard for me to not spend money on, to a point that I actually made, a silly Instagram post where I said my toxic trait is using my emergency fund to travel to Scotland.
Yes.
People who are listening, do not do that. That is bad. But I definitely used part of my emergency fund to pay for a trip to Scotland. But the funny thing is, like, even though I know that decision was not exactly the quote smart one when it comes to money, I don't regret it at all. I loved that trip. It was so much fun. It was beautiful. I can't wait to go back and spend more time there. And so, yeah, that's where I actually have to reel myself in, because I will travel all the time if I can.
Yeah, so. That's the same for me. Travel experiences are my gazingas pin.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's an okay gazingas pin, though. In my opinion. Cool. So let's move on a little bit to your why of FI. Why are you, I know we've kind of touched on this a little bit, but I see that you have more that you might want to speak to of why you're pursuing financial independence, especially given the fact that you guys enjoy your jobs. I'd like to hear more about that.
Katie, did you want to talk about the path exercise we did recently? That was after my return from Vegas, right?
Right. So Sean kind of went to that Vegas meetup and took some tools away from that. And I had a framework that I had been trained in to help kind of frame the framework in a different way. Like it's kind of, we did a little bit of like vision boarding, where we kind of talked through together what our future plans were in the next 10 years. And we drew that out to make that a little bit more concrete for ourselves, and talking about where we want to be in 10 years. What does that look like a year from now? And how do we get from where we are now to a year from now to 10 years? And I think in 10 years, we'd like to just have that flexibility of where we choose to spend our time. So Sean, do you want to talk about what you would envision your day looking like?
Yeah, absolutely. So it was fun because we did draw, we drew this out on some butcher paper with markers, and it was very colorful. And then, you break it down and like include who's going to support you on this, on this journey. What does your community look like, both now and in 10 years? So in 10 years, our daughter, Eleanor, she'll be 18, probably going to college. And I think we want to be in a place where, like Katie said, work would be a little more optional, or where we would have some more optionality to do some meaningful things or continue, what we're doing. Yeah, I guess. So Katie, you were just saying, what's the day look like, right?
Yeah. And
I'm going to start from there.
Okay. Yeah.
Well, what were you going to say? Sorry.
I was going to say, like, in true form, my gazingas pin is travel. And as we think about Eleanor exiting high school, Sean's gazingas pin is not travel. I think he would prefer to be home, take care of things.
I think here's the thing. We do live, I don't know if this is okay to say, but like we live in a beautiful house with over an acre of land in Illinois. So it's a very tillable earth, right? We have a garden, right? So I like to spend time outside, right? I'd like to get some more native plants going in our yard, right? I'd like to make our garden bigger, right? So like all these things, we have some of that vision includes doing things at home, right? But I think we both also love going on adventures and traveling. And here's the thing, I have trouble when I'm working thinking about travel, right? Because it's like, our jobs are pretty stressful, right? So it's almost like I need space. It's like one more thing to plan, right? And so that sometimes is difficult. But I love the actual travel part, which is great because Katie really likes the planning part. So I think it's a good mix. But you're right, Katie. Like I do like doing things right in our backyard. We live in Northern Illinois. I love riding my bike around here, and I like traveling within the U.S. too. But there's a big world out there and lots to see. So anyway,
And I think
we have been. Yeah, go ahead.
Part of our short-term planning that Eleanor and I have talked about is that in 10 years, she'll be exiting high school. In approximately 10 years, she'll be exiting high school. And I feel like that's a great time to take a moment and pause and think about what it is that you want to do with the rest of your life. And it's also before you're making those connections. If you want to build internships, and all of those opportunities can happen in the future. But in that year between your senior year of high school and beginning whatever your potential future path could be, and there could be lots of twists and turns on that path, that's great, that's fine. But there's an opportunity there for us to travel the world and see how other people live, how other countries do it, what the rest of the world looks like. So I think for me, in 10 years, I'd like to be able to take that pause with her so that I can also reflect on how lucky we are here in America and in Northern Illinois, but also just to get that world view, that experience, so that we can take what we want from that experience and put that in our lives and figure out where we might want to spend our energies after that.
Yeah, and that would be a great gift for your daughter, Eleanor. I am one of those people who likes to think that life is long in a lot of ways and life is short in a lot of ways. And I feel like this is one of those moments where you can tell her life is long. And this is one of those moments where you can show her, like, you have enough time to do all of the things that you want to do. You will only be 18 once. You will only be able to travel with us around the world. You can always do that later, of course, but in this moment, you have this chance, so you can take it and you can think about, the internships in college and whatever you want to do later, because life is long, right? And I think she's really lucky to have you guys, and she's really lucky to have this opportunity that you're giving her. So
yeah, hopefully she'll want to hang out with us in 10 years.
That's the hook. Yeah. That's the hook, is that we'll pay for the trip, but she has to spend that year hanging out with us.
Right.
Yeah, hopefully by 18, she'll grow out of the EU parents stage.
Right, yeah.
Sean, I had a question for you. So the way that I was hearing you guys talk about travel versus you like to do a lot of things in your own backyard, figuratively and literally, what, I guess, kind of, do you ever envision a world where you could do both, travel and do the, gardening, homesteading thing and do your backyard things at the same time? Not necessarily at the same time, but like within the same period of time.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that like is part of our vision, right? So, it's right, Katie, like that was part of our 10-year vision plan, is like doing it all.
After we come back from our year-long world trip and we have our favorite destinations in the world, maybe that we want to spend a little bit more time in, picked out, we can come back. And I think our ideal time would be to take care of the homestead on a day-to-day basis, and where the time allows, whether it's like a couple weeks in the summer or a longer period of time in the winter, be able to travel and maybe be able to have other people stay at our house to take care of the homestead. And it's a getaway for them as well.
Yeah, that sounds perfect. I love that. I myself, I don't have several acres of land. I have very little postage stamp, size garden, but I can tell you that if you do plant only native plants, especially if they're native specifically to your state, they will survive without you just fine after about
Right.
6 months. Yeah, they're awesome. They're very easy to take care of for that exact reason. So I can attest to that. Are you ready to take control of your financial future? Do you want to learn how to set powerful goals and invest wisely? Have you been yearning to quit your 9 to 5? Then my workbook, Your Journey to Freedom, is for you. This workbook is your roadmap to financial success. Whether you're a seasoned investor or just starting out, it's designed to help you define your goals, create a plan, and take action towards building wealth. Inside, you'll find practical exercises and tools that will help you identify your short, medium, and long-term financial goals, develop a personalized investment strategy tailored to these goals and your risk tolerance, track your progress and stay accountable to your financial objectives. Plus, there's bonus content like a quiz to test what you learn and a budget worksheet. With easy-to-follow instructions and insightful prompts, this workbook will empower you to make confident decisions and stay focused on your financial journey. Don't let another day go by without taking charge of your financial life. Invest in yourself and your future with the Your Journey to Freedom workbook. Order now and start turning your dreams into reality. Visit my website at everyday-fi.com/guides to get your copy today and start your journey to financial freedom. So what does reaching financial independence look like for you? What is it like on the other side for you guys? What does like a Tuesday look like for you?
I think so, like definitely like waking up next to each other, drinking a cup of coffee, going outside, getting that sunlight into our eyes on our morning walk. We've been doing a thing where we walk together on the weekends. I think things like that will continue. Definitely like a physical aspect. Do you agree, Katie?
Yeah, I love that you're going through our path. Exactly. Like I'm envisioning it on the vision board where we've got our cups of coffee drawn and we've got ourselves like going for a walk in the neighborhood and going out to the garden to either fertilize the plants or collect the crops or can the crops.
And we do. I mean, like we're doing some pretty cool things right now, right? Like we do have a garden. We compost all our stuff, all our food waste. I mean, like our plant, not all our food waste, but so yeah, like doing more of the things that we're doing. And it is nice to kind of draw some of these things out because then they sometimes stick. But I also wanted to say, like, for this question, you kind of, Megan, gave us these questions ahead of time, but sometimes I see videos of Vicki Robin on the, what was the fire movie called? Playing with Fire, right?
Yeah, Playing with Fire. Mm-hmm.
So, they did all these interviews. Whenever I see Vicki Robin interviewed, she's just like, to me, she just hits it out of the park, right? She talks about like her journey and how that social capital is so important and how community is so important. So I think all of that is just kind of cool too. One of the things we've done I don't know if this is a later question, but one of the things we've done on our journey is just investing in real estate, and I think that's something we'd like to continue to do, just providing places for people to live. And we work with the same realtor that town I work in now. And she's just great because we can talk about our renters and just provide that service of a place to live, even if it is sometimes a headache. But it's definitely part of the community, right? Like we invest in the communities where we live. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with not doing that, right? But that's just like a choice we've made. So probably not getting the kind of returns we would if we invested out of state.
Yeah, that's part of the value that we have identified for ourselves in the real estate journey is going along with our like providing community service or providing a service to the community through our jobs as educators, also making sure that people have affordable housing and that everybody has equal access to housing opportunities, whether or not they have the established credit or whether they themselves are established enough to have qualified for a rental otherwise. Right, Sean?
Yeah, for sure. They'll post this on the on the Bigger Pockets website. But yeah, exactly. Yeah. So when I talk about like some of the choices we make with our realtor, because we work with her because, we work with professionals who are good at finding tenants, right? And again, like these are just choices we're making, but not necessarily ones we're advocating for from a financial perspective. But anyway, getting back to just like what a day looks like, I talked about cycling, but really one of the things I talked about in Vegas and, designing your extraordinary life, one of those things that I'm trying to do more of is get on my bike more, just for regular things, right? Commuting to work, running errands, going to the store. So that's one of the things I'd like to see in the future too, right? Whether it's an e-bike or just my regular bike, going to running errands, running around town, just on a bike, and then doing some projects with the local, conservation organizations in our area that are reintroducing native plants, getting rid of invasive ones, things like that.
And expanding our worldview more locally by pursuing classes at the community college, or just exploring those things that maybe we didn't get to explore when we were in college because we were so tracked. Even though we both went to liberal arts universities, I feel like there's a lot of areas of interest that I didn't really get to explore because they wouldn't lead to a career that would be well funded. So I'd like to spend a little bit more time learning about those interests.
Yeah, that sounds like a great life. And I'm with you, Katie. I loved going to school, and I was always so disappointed that I couldn't take all of the classes I was interested in because A, you had to pay for them, and B, you kind of had to concentrate on, getting that degree and what went towards that. And I've always thought to myself, man, I can't wait till I'm 65 and I can just go to college for free. Because there's a lot of colleges that will just let you go for free if you're over 65. Mm-hmm. Which is awesome. Yeah. So I'm with you on that. It sounds like you guys have it all planned out. And I actually wanted to ask you, you mentioned the path exercises a couple of times, and I wondered if that was a resource that you could share with the audience. Is that something that you got from somewhere? Did you have prompts? I'd love to put it in the show notes if so.
Yeah, I'll see if I can find a resource. There is like a procedure to follow. It's something that I was trained on, that like the vision is that we'd be doing this. So I work in a high school setting, and the vision is that we would be doing this with families as they're preparing for their developmentally disabled child to transition to adulthood. And I think it's applicable across all age ranges and ability levels, but I can definitely see what I am able to share with you.
Yeah, that would be excellent and very appreciated of those who would like to do the same sort of vision board type of exercise with themselves or their family. Thank you for that. And I heard you guys say that there are things that you want to do more of, in your life right now. But what do you want to do less of once you've reached financial independence?
I had an answer to this, Katie. I don't know if you read it over. So I said, I listen to a lot of podcasts, and I think, Megan, you were saying at the Vegas event that you do too. Is that right?
Yes, I listen to 6 different financial podcasts, and yes, it's a lot.
I've learned so much, and I've started trying to pare back because it's always oh man, I'm not up to date or whatever, right? And that's fine, but I think I'd like to read, replace some of that with reading books, right? Even if they're audiobooks. But yeah, just there's so much content out there. Sometimes I get overwhelmed, but that doesn't really answer your question. So less of.
No, that totally answered my question. And it's funny because it's an interesting answer, because in theory, you'll have more time once you reach financial independence, right? So you would think, oh, I can listen to more podcasts, but you're like, no, I want to do less of that. And I want to add these other things in where maybe they're even longer form content, like books and things like that. So I actually really like that answer. Yeah. And Katie, is there anything that you're doing that you want to do less of?
I think just the bureaucratic part of my job. I really like the community. I like the people. I like interfacing with systems. And I'd like to continue to do that, I think, even after I'm like done formally working. Like, I think I'd like to still work as a consultant and be involved in the educational system, but I don't love having to be part of the bureaucratic system of filling out paperwork and forms and that part of the job.
Yeah, I don't think I know anybody who likes that part of their job. Admin work and bureaucracy is the worst. Okay, so what is your strategy for reaching financial independence? I know you mentioned real estate investing, but I know you also said that that's not necessarily, you don't necessarily do it to make money. You're doing it more in service to your community, which I commend you for. So are there other ways that you're reaching this? I also know you said you are investing in the stock market, but is there anything specific that you'd like to dive in on about your strategy?
I mean, our real estate, like that's like between our primary home where we live, then we have, what happened is I had a condo. When we moved to our current house, I rented it out and I was like, well, this worked great. So we just bought some more and we used HELOCs to fund those. But then we refinanced our own house at, historically low interest rates, right? Like to fund the most recent. So like that, it really has worked out, right? Like financially. And, of course, rents are appreciating because everything's appreciating. But yeah, I mean, so like that is making money. I mean, it certainly hasn't done as well as our stock portfolio. I don't know. We talk about this stuff here, right? We're 100%, like in our retirement accounts and everything else, we're 100% equities. And mostly it's retirement accounts. In education, of course, we have the option to invest in the 457, right? Which you can access before 60. So that's a really great thing for public servants. But in addition to that, we could both invest in our 403Bs, right? So collectively, we could be, what is that, 23, just shy of $100,000 that we could be socking away. We're not, but, all pre-tax, right? So, and then we have our Roths too, which that's kind of like what I've always considered my emergency fund. So, we save everything and on the front end. And then I don't really keep an emergency fund. Katie does for us. And then just like Brad, we keep a pretty cushion in our just regular checking account.
Yeah, that makes sense. And also with the 457s, from what I understand, when you separate from service, you have access to that money right away. Isn't that correct? Like there's no age limits on it once you separate from service.
Right. Yeah, you're right. So we could do, if you switch jobs, right, you have access to that. So you can take a gap year and have access to that. Is that what you're saying, Megan?
Yeah, like it's basically, if you have a 401k at work, you can separate from service and, roll it into an IRA, but there's still age limits. You still can't access that money until retirement age. But from what I understand from a 457, you can access that money right away. Like there is no age restriction. Am I correct? I thought I heard that.
Yeah.
And I was jealous.
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay.
Yeah, no, it's amazing, right? Like it's, so we don't have to worry about the 52T or whatever anyway,
72T?
72T.
Yeah.
Anyway, yes, exactly. So, but yeah, you're right. We don't have to worry about that because like the 457s are just it's a really nice option because it bridges the gap, right? Between whenever you quote, retire, right? Whenever you're done working at the school or wherever and age 60, when you can start dipping into your 403B or 401k or whatever else there is.
Yeah. And it's still a tax advantaged account from what I understand as well. So you've got it coming and going. It's one of those, if you've got it, use it type of accounts. And I'm very jealous. And for anybody, go ahead.
For sure. Because yeah, I mean, if we retire and say we're done, we separate from service in 10 years, right? So we're done with our day jobs in 10 years as they look now. You can start drawing on that. And if you don't have other sources of income, right, your tax rate is very low up to the standard deduction. Like that's all free. And I mean, I know there's a ton of podcasts about all of that, right? Just the different tax strategies. But yeah, so essentially, yeah, you're not potentially paying taxes going in or coming out.
Yeah, that's pretty sweet. And for anybody who doesn't know, the 72T SEPP is what we were mentioning earlier, and it's just a way of accessing your retirement account money in a very certain way. I'm not going to dive into the particulars. It is a very complex way of accessing retirement money early, but I would love to do an episode someday on the particulars of that and the Roth ladder. So stay tuned. Hopefully I'll bring on one of my buddies who's a CFP to help us talk about that. Katie, do you have any other types of strategies outside of what Sean's doing? Are you kind of doing the same things as him? And second question, why do you keep an emergency fund when Sean doesn't? And how do you kind of feel about that?
I do just follow the same strategies that he uses. My district that I'm with right now doesn't contract out with an advantageous 403b plan provider. They only use the predatory provider. So that's why I'm only invested in my 457 and my Roth. I don't have that same 403b strategy that Sean has. And my upbringing kind of made me feel like I had to have an emergency fund just in case anything were to ever happen. I don't even know what I'm saving for or worried about, but my mom instilled in me that I had to have a certain number in savings. And for right now, I guess that's like, it could be used flexibly. So if we needed to buy a new car or something, we're both driving cars that are over 10 years old. My car has just under 300,000 miles on it. And I'm feeling like buying a new car might be something that we need to think about in the foreseeable future. I'd like to be able to have that money available.
That's awesome that your car has just under 300,000, and I hope you guys go out and celebrate whenever it reaches 300,000, because that deserves, a party. That's amazing.
Yes, we're definitely committed to trying to get it there.
For sure. I will say, I'll just plug, I think it's a 5 favorite, the Toyota Prius. And once Katie had her Prius before I had mine, and I traded my little Subi in for a Prius because I started driving hers around, and it was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. So anyway, I got my own. So we have matching Priuses, and not matching, they're different colors.
Well, we are all in the Prius club because I also have a Prius that's 12 years old.
Nice.
Excellent. Yeah. Yes.
And I love her. Really? She only has 161,000 miles because I don't drive hardly at all. So I don't know if I will ever reach the 300,000 mile point, but I'm definitely going to celebrate when I reach 200,000. And I'm keeping her. I have this desire of like keeping her for so long that I give her to my kid to drive. Yeah. I feel like I don't know if she'll last that long because I don't have kids yet. And so that's like, she'll have to last another 20 years. And by then she'd be like 32 years old. And I'd be like, I don't know if she's going to last that long, but maybe. I think that would be hilarious. I think she can do it. I think she can do it. Awesome. So, okay, which FI path are you targeting? Are you targeting like fat FI, regular FI, lean FI, barista FI, coast FI? And for anybody who doesn't know what each of these are, I'm going to real quick recap what they are. Fat FI is 30x your expenses. Regular FI is 25x. Lean FI, I believe, is 20x. And barista and coast FI are basically the same thing, where your retirement accounts hit a certain level to where you can stop contributing and the money will grow to what you need at 65. And so that allows you, if your expenses are low enough, to live on a very low income. And so you can do jobs that are more fulfilling and have lower pay. And I think there's a bunch of different other kinds of FI, but those are the ones that I know. So I was wondering if you guys were targeting one specifically.
I think just like our strategy works with Coast FI the best, right? It's like whether you're kind of talking about like bridging the gap, or at some point we won't have to save any more. And then, like you said, maybe switch to something more. It's a little different. Like Katie said, like maybe consulting or something like that. Katie, would you agree?
Yeah, I think like that coast fi is what we're targeting at this point. And I think that our pensions lend themselves to viewing our savings just a little bit differently, because we will have that income coming in after a certain age. So we're really only having to bridge the gap and then making sure that our pensions would meet the needs of our expenses when that time comes.
Part of the saving is just like, we don't need to buy anything, right? Like, and I'm not saying like we need to like donate all our, I mean, not that that's a bad idea either, right? Like, I'm just saying, like, I don't know if we've figured it out yet. My point is, like, there's a high cost to consumption, right?
Yeah, for sure. The high cost of consumption is an interesting thought.
Yeah. So like, there's an environmental cost to like the things we buy, right? So it's like, I do try to balance these things in my head, right? Like, what do we have? What is this lifestyle that, like, it's amazing, right? Like, we're living an extraordinary life, being able to drive around in cars and and go to work and being healthy and go to work every day, right? So yeah, I mean, I think some of the things we're doing, like, we're trying to minimize cost, but at the same time have a benefit, right? So we got like solar panels in our ground mount solar panels recently, right? So it's like, yes, that's a financial advantage, but like, maybe it's beneficial to reduce our energy consumption as well. That said, like, probably our next car will be an electric car because we're producing more electricity than we're using right now. So it makes sense that we would do that. So the less expensive options, right, like moving forward into retirement or not, are also good for the earth, right? So like, we do a lot of sharing in our communities, right? So like, we have some friends who live in the next town over, and they share our tractor, right? So I think like setting up those communities, our tractor, like our riding lawnmower, right? So I think just setting up these communities in which we use and borrow and give, and it builds community, it builds health, and I think there's just multiple benefits. So I think it's like the financial independence is like super a part of what we're doing, but also like trying to make the world a better place. Katie, anything to add there?
Yeah, no, I think you summed that up really, really well. So
yeah, and just a side note, by the way, I was reading the other day of which car is the most environmentally friendly, because I was very curious about that. And it's actually a plug-in hybrid. And I believe it is the plug-in hybrid Prius. So I would look that up, because it's actually, and it's because they're taking into account manufacturing along with when you're using it. So the actual creation of the car and what goes into that, they're adding that into the equation. So I would look that up, just as a side note.
Yeah.
If anybody is curious about that, it was a shock to me, because I was expecting it to be just a plain EV, and it wasn't. So I am with you. I am very much, an environmentalist myself, native plants for the wind, and Priuses, 12-year-old Priuses for the win. So I'm right there with you. And, they talk about reduce, reuse, recycle. That is a fun saying for a reason. And it's not just good for the earth, it's good for your wallet too. So it's just, triple win right there. Good for your wallet, good for your health, good for the environment. So yeah, I'm with you on that. Let's switch gears to talking about your current struggles right now. And yeah, if Katie, you want to start?
Sure. Yeah. I think that there's not any major struggle. I think, like we talked about before, we're kind of on a nice path right now where everything's working out. Our incomes are steady. Our savings rate is steady. And the big question, I think, on our mind, as Sean kind of talked about with the solar panels, is with all the extra electricity that we're producing and our cars aging and getting up there in their mileage, what would our next purchase, like what should our next car purchase be? / are there any other home improvement projects that we want to invest in for ourselves? So it's good to know that the Prius Prime is one of those environmentally friendly cars. For me, I was wondering about the maintenance of a gas powered vehicle in addition to whatever add-ons the EV would add on to that. But I'll have to take a look at what the research is out there about the Prius Prime versus an EV.
And I'm happy to link where I found this, and it, like I said, I just don't quote me on anything. I just was looking it up myself and saw it. I don't even remember what the source was, but I'm going to track it down and put it in the show notes. And I'll send it directly to you, Katie, so you can, tell me, no, you're wrong, or yes, you're right. I'd love to know.
Yeah, we haven't done any research. So any research is a good place to start.
Tommy did the research, Kate. No, my cousin recently bought a Prius Prime. He lives in Illinois. He drove out to Colorado to get it. His sister lives in Colorado, so it all worked out. But anyway, sorry.
No,
segue.
That's awesome.
You don't know.
It's okay. That's awesome. What are your current struggles right now, Sean?
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's so true for many people in the FI community, when to pull that trigger, right? And it's I think just the comfortability, if that's a word, with knowing that we'll be fine, right? And it's maybe running the numbers about okay, well, this is what in 10 years, just it's always in the back of your mind, will it be enough, right? If I just put one more year in after that, then I'd have that much more money. And it's well, when's enough, right? And I think that's the answer, enough, right? That's been my focus, right? Not only enough money and resources and things like that, but just what's enough in my own life too, right? It's what do I have to be the best at, right? Because I feel I'm always moving the goalpost, right? And we do as humans, right? We're constantly seeking to get better and everything, but it's also just where's the content too, right? We're talking about oh, should we buy this or this, right? It just really points to the privilege that we have, right?
Yeah, I hear you. And I didn't mention this before, but I really appreciate you acknowledging that you're privileged, and I am myself as well. And that, that does make it a lot easier for us to go on this kind of journey to financial independence. And there's a huge swath of people, even just in this country, who don't have the same upbringings that we had, don't have the same resources that we have, don't have the same, societal status, whatever that is that we have. And it'll just be that much harder for them. And I appreciate you recognizing that. But I also want to point out that it still took hard work for you to get here. And it still took a lot of, knowing yourself and learning and growing and changing your behaviors to get to this point. And so I wouldn't discount that at all, because the FI path is a very different way of thinking about money. And a lot of people shy away from it at first. I mean, you even said whoever could save 50% in reaction to Mr. Money Mustache. The funny thing is, I had the exact same reaction to him when I was 25, living in New York City, living on $25,000 a year. And this freaking guy comes on and is interviewing, I don't think I heard him on a podcast. I think I just read an article where they were interviewing him, and I was like, who the hell is this guy? What does he know? I can't possibly live on half my income. I can barely even afford groceries. So that message didn't resonate with me right away, but I was able to change my mindset and get to the point, after some years of growth and even income growth, and get to a point of okay, that's not the only message that's here. It's a way of thinking about the world where you are not just trying to make money, but you're also trying to improve things like you and Katie are. And you're also trying to think outside the box and think about things differently than the traditional keeping up with the Joneses. And anyway, I'm rambling a little bit, sorry, but I'm just really resonating with everything you're saying. And I really appreciate it all. So.
Yeah, you really hit it on the head, Megan. Yeah, it's but I was thinking about it as the money, right? With this Mr. Money Mustache thing, it's oh, that's impossible, right? But it's what if it is possible? But no, everything you said really resonated with me.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, no, thanks for sharing that. And it's a journey, right? And it is incremental, right? And I think it's so cool that you're doing this podcast, because it's like people are just like regular people are doing this, right? Like it's so cool that just like people are doing this, and you're giving people an outlet to kind of share their regular stories, right? And we need like help on that. Like Choose FI has been great because they, Brad really highlights all these like incremental steps, right? And yeah, I don't want to minimize, like we've done incremental steps and gotten better and learned stuff. And it just happens that like the stuff I've learned the stuff that has really resonated with me is like that stuff about, how do we make the world a better place? Like you were saying.
And I think that normalizing all that stuff that happens in that messy middle where you're making those choices and you're changing your mindset, I think that is also super powerful. And I think that we've been really lucky in the community that we're surrounded by, or the community that we've chosen to be a part of. They're keeping up with the Joneses is, our really close friends are FI basically, and keeping up with the Joneses is making sure that we're keeping our spending in check and making sure that we're continuing to save appropriately and reusing and sharing and recycling all of the goods that we have within our community. But it is great to hear what other people are doing in that messy middle that are normal, everyday people that haven't already reached that.
Yeah, exactly. And I feel like having those stories, Sean, as you said, it's an outlet for people to tell their story, but is also, well, what my aim is a way for us to share our stories in a different way instead of just the anonymized Facebook group. I personally was in the Choose FI Facebook group for a few months, and I left for a while because I actually found it kind of toxic, because unfortunately, social media, because of the anonymity, it causes people to have less compassion for each other. And so sometimes there's a lot of judgment that happens. But I feel like if you're actually hearing a person's voice on the other side and really diving deep into their stories and how they got to where they were, you can connect with them on another level that's different than just the internet. And I feel like this is going to bring more people along on the financial independence path. And we made a joke at Camp FI this last weekend that we're trying to recruit for our soft cult of financial independence. And, I laugh because, we talk about us being a cult, but, not really. So soft cult. But, that is kind of my aim, is I want people to connect to this message, but not every message is going to resonate the same way. And so I want this to be an outlet for people, but I also want this to be a place where people can find community members that they're like, I totally get that. That is me. And if they can see themselves in us, in the people who are sharing, who are brave enough to share their story, then I think they can see themselves on this path. I want to know if you guys have a life hack, recommendation, or learning for the community.
Yeah, I'm just going to steal your answer that you wrote on here, Sean.
Yeah.
It's a really good one. But in our family, we have a daily gratitude practice where right before Eleanor's bedtime, the three of us will go through things that we're grateful for and things that we love about ourselves. And I think that just creates that mindset so that your mind is always looking for those things that you're grateful for, and creates a sense of satisfaction with the things that you have in your life, as well as the self-esteem builders about the things that you love about yourself, so that you're not looking for those external validations, but also building that self-confidence in your ability to be embodied in yourself. So that's our life hack.
Mm-hmm.
Sean, is that your life hack as well, or do you have something else?
No, the gratitude practice has just been, I would say, like, that's just a very powerful one, because it just helps to change your mindset, right? We talk a lot about self-care. Like, as school psychologists, we talk to other educators about self-care, but that's one that I always share. And of course, you can't like self-care your way. You can't gratitude practice out of your way out of, mental health conditions, right? You need professional help for that, but like medical intervention. But like, it's such a good practice, like as a family. You can cut this next part out, Megan. But
Sure.
and then we just like leverage what we have, right? So we chose to live on a big yard, so have a garden, right? We moved into a house where our friend actually who lived here previously, he was a carpenter, so he left all his like lumber, and we've used it to build a compost, our compost pile or our compost bin, I guess. And I built a plow for the Prius. I just wanted to get that in there, Megan, because I'm really proud of it. But you don't. Anyway, I built a Prius plow. So it's the only YouTube video I've ever uploaded. But so you plow the snow in reverse, and it's like a lever and everything. Anyway, if you look up Prius plow, it's one of the videos that comes up.
I'm keeping that in there, the Prius plow part. And I will be linking your video in the show notes because we all need to know how to put a plow on our Priuses. That's amazing.
Anyway, yeah, that's the main point though is like leverage what you have, right? We owned a house, so we, refinanced it. And that was like risky, but like we refinanced it to buy another, leverage the resources that you have and take risks and,
I think you hit it. I'm glad that you put the Prius plow in there.
Yeah, me too. Thank you for sharing that. We're coming to the end of our time. We're at the end of our time, really. But I want to make sure that if there's anything that you haven't covered yet that you wanted to bring up before we end, this is your chance.
I would just say, like, any way to recapture some of your time. Like, I noticed myself, like, one of the things I did shortly after the trip to Vegas, I sold all of my, actually, maybe it was before. But anyway, I sold all of my individual stock positions because I found myself checking them frequently, right? And we're not talking about a lot of money, but like that, like freed up so much mental space. And it was just like a hobby, something I was doing just for fun. But still, it was like, why am I doing this? Why am I spending all this time? The return didn't even matter. It was just the time that I was spending, like checking my two tickers,
I really appreciate you both coming on and sharing your journey and diving into all of the details and telling us about your Priuses and your Prius plow. And this was a really great time. And yeah, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Thanks for listening to the Everyday 5 podcast. If you're loving the show, here are some things you can do. Number 1, subscribe in your favorite podcast player and share the show with your friends and family. Number 2, please leave a review. I'm always looking for ways to improve the show. Number 3, check out my website, everyday-fi.com, where you can listen to all the episodes and leave comments for myself and the guest. Number 4, if you're interested in sharing your own financial independence story, you can find a submission form at everyday-fi.com/podcast. And finally, number 5, join my Patreon membership for only $5 a month at patreon.com/everyday5podcast. This is a one-woman show, so every little bit counts. See you next time as we continue to go down the path to financial freedom.